7.0 isn't necessarily going to change everything, but it's very much the foundation for what they're trying to build on. And that is often what we see is businesses that have a WordPress website, they're obviously really investing in their brand because they want a website that's going to last and that's going to have, consistently good performance. Hi everyone, welcome back to another ProfileTree podcast episode. I'm joined by Jack and Porrick today, and we're going to be discussing the WordPress 7.0 launch. So WordPress 7.0, which is nicknamed Armstrong, which I learned this week. WordPress always names their new models after famous jazz musicians. It was launched on the 20th of May. For context, WordPress powers around 43% of all of the websites on the internet. So this update is obviously going to have a huge impact. WordPress 7.0 was originally supposed to introduce real-time collaboration for the platform, but that feature wasn't ready in time. By real-time collaboration, think kind of along the lines of co-editing on things like Google Docs. What they launched instead is actually arguably more significant. Basically native AI integration, which is built directly into the WordPress CMS. So I suppose off the bat, Porrick, none of us here are website developers, nor do we claim to be. So even put simply, for businesses who are currently using WordPress websites, are there any practical updates or new features that come to mind whenever you've seen the new 7.0 launched?
Yeah, so the biggest one that probably the general marketers or kind of people from a non-development background that are managing websites for business owners or marketing managers is the continued evolution from the block or to the block-based editor. So WordPress uses Gutenberg editor, so it's kind of like a plain page editor. It is probably manageable with some kind of experience that without a development background, but it is a lot more complex than, say, the likes of Wix or Webflow with drag and drop builders, where it's, anybody can almost do it even without training. You can kind of go in and poke around and figure your way around things. Traditionally, the WordPress editor wouldn't have been that straightforward, and you would have hit a lot of kind of stumbling blocks along the way where you would have maybe got so far in making changes or building something, but you would have had to pull in developers kind of for certain parts of it. It's very easy for text and image changes, but even kind of the interface traditionally wouldn't have been that user friendly. So what we're kind of seeing with this is like a further kind of evolution along that way to kind of moving towards a block-based editor. Again, that will make people's jobs a lot easier just for doing simple things like page changes or adding pages or little layout changes. So it is getting smaller. It's not fully there yet. But again, it's an improvement building on it. So like more and more things you can do now without actually needing a developer to do it. The global styles and reusable design systems are becoming a bit more standard. So it should make it, that will probably be one of the bigger impacts of it, that you would actually visibly see. So it should make anyone using the editor day to day, their lives a bit easier.
Just even adding into what Pork said about making people's lives a wee bit easier, they also introduced it in this 7.0 update, a dedicated font library. So that can just be found through clicking on the appearances, then go into fonts on the sidebar. And it gives site owners and editors a more centralized way to manage, upload, and install fonts across their website. So this is really useful for maintaining brand consistency, as teams can control typography more easily without relying on custom code or separate theme settings.
Yeah, do you know what? It seems to be things like that that's going to make everyone's life a wee bit easier. And I think WordPress themselves have said, 7.0 isn't necessarily going to change everything, but it's very much the foundation for what they're trying to build on. And that is often what we see is businesses that have a WordPress website, they're obviously really investing in their brand because they want a website that's going to last and that's going to have, consistently good performance. What I think you probably agree, Jack, what we often see with some of the smaller, medium-sized enterprises that we're working with is they're kind of looking for convenience. So they tend to avoid WordPress, don't they? They would usually go for Wix or Squarespace or platforms like that.
Yeah, just the similar drag and drop method of creating the actual website itself. A lot of kind of users that don't really have much experience with web development, or maybe have never even looked at a website or developing their own website in the past, Wix and Squarespace, it would really be their go-to just due to the user friendliness of it all. So it's nice to see WordPress moving in that direction.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think they've probably recognized like there's a big market share that we're missing out on because there is this conception of, right or wrong of WordPress as like a developer's platform, which is totally fair enough. I mean, I think the big move, obviously, up until this point, any AI functionality within WordPress has been through third-party plugins, which I think people then can find at times a little bit messy or a little bit inconsistent, or even just having all those extra plugins on your website can be a wee bit harder to manage. Having the sort of AI native access to those tools is going to make it a lot easier. Um, and, just in terms of what we're seeing in the earlier reports, it's going to make it easier to use AI to do things, beyond just generating text in your website. So whether that be navigating your dashboard, adding content to your site, building pages, or automated tasks. And I've also seen Elementor's agentic AI, I think it's called Angie. Um, People are already doing some amazing things with it, like, building apps within the website, whether that's like currency converters or bug reporting tools. I think it's going to be a case where once this thing really gets off the ground, the possibilities are going to be pretty endless. Um, and as well as that, we're seeing a number of practical improvements, outside of the AI element of the update. And that's things like a cleaner, more modern dashboard. So WordPress users would be familiar with what the dashboard looks like. They've tried to make that a little bit more sleek, a little bit easier to navigate. Again, I think with non-developer business owners in mind, so that it's again making it more accessible. There's going to be more options or sort of potential improvements for mobile menu customization, which I think a lot of people have been looking for a long time. And also the ability to show or hide content on different devices without requiring the use of a professional web developer, which I think is going to, mean the world to a lot of business owners who don't necessarily have the time or the resources to maybe employ, a third party agency or developer, or maybe waiting on that text back from their developer who said that they would do something for them. Um, I think also security wise, important bug that they fixed, it was in relation to new users accidentally being given admin level access through a simple settings error. So things like that, WordPress have obviously really paid attention to some of the maybe potential bugs or things that users might frequently provide feedback on that aren't working for them at the minute. Um, any other features, Porrick, that kind of stood out to you with this update?
So we talked a bit about the improving kind of user experience from the editor as well. There's also some performance improvements. So website speed is now like a core focus for WordPress development. Performance does affect SEO conversions and user experience. So the newer versions improve background efficiency. So just like the load speed and obviously the weight of everything on the application itself. So that obviously kind of with every update gets a little bit streamlined. There's better script loading and database optimization with the new version as well. So it all is kind of things you won't see, but it's like the engine underneath the car that it kind of just helps improve performance and speed. As well, I know like a lot of large sites, kind of even with good strong servers and hosts and everything, when you are logging into WordPress, it can feel a bit heavy and slow sometimes, kind of navigating around the dashboard in the back end or opening pages. Even once you make changes to a page, saving it or previewing it, like it is robust and good, but WordPress can always feel that little bit slow once you're doing things. So there is kind of some improvements with that as well. Especially if you're going between multiple pages trying to change something like dates or something changes on their website that you have 5 different pages and you change it. The process of kind of clicking in and opening each of them and saving it, something that could take seconds, can take a few minutes per page, and it can be like slightly frustrating at times. So there is like a bit of streamlining with that as well to just kind of improve the kind of admin back end experience as well, just to speed it up.
Yeah, I think I've seen some articles and some videos that talk about the the visual change log. So it's going to make it easier to be able to kind of restore versions and to see like, okay, what exactly did this look like before? And you're looking at it on the front end, which I think again is what a non-developer mind wants. It's like, okay, how do I get it to look like it did before? Which is
Yeah.
exactly what I would say if it was my website and something wasn't quite working. So I think features like that are going to be so helpful.
When you're not that, confident in what you're doing, again, you're not a developer background, you're kind of changing one or two things or changing a sentence or moving like one block, and then you're saving it open in a new tab just to check on the front end that you haven't like broke the entire page or broke the website. So again, that's where I like that block editor, just to make things a little bit easier for the non-developer background people.
Yeah.
Again,
removing that fear.
Yeah, one thing you'll kind of find with WordPress as well, once you do kind of get that bit of experience and know what you're doing, editing the page becomes very easy. But next thing, you scroll to the bottom, there's the footer and you want to change a link, or at the very top, the menu, it does look like you're on that page when you're there, but the headers, footers are actually sometimes kind of a difficult area to find. You're kind of going in editing templates and it's a different kind of area entirely than if you're on the home page and you say, all right, I just want to change a menu item, or I want to change a link in the footer. Intuitively, you would say, all right, I'll open the editor on the home page, but you'll see it's grayed out that you can't select on it. You have to go back into the back end and kind of like a different route to get into that area. So I think they're as well streamlining that stuff, so it's a bit easier for that. I find myself, if have a client that asks kind of a quick change like that, it's very easy to go in and make text changes that, but it will take me a few minutes in their site to kind of figure out, all right, where do I actually find the header, the footer, the menu. Just a bit of clicking about. Again, it is something you find, but it's just not kind of as easy or straightforward that if you don't have that development background, you don't know exactly kind of where to go, and it can vary like a little bit site to site.
Yeah, and imagine being able to just potentially write a prompt that says, please change this section on this page and replace it with this text. Like the possibilities seem kind of endless.
Yeah.
And I suppose another thing, off the top of my head that we would frequently see in terms of issues with not necessarily just WordPress, but a lot of websites, but especially WordPress in some cases, is plugin management. The more plugins, the more potential issues. Not confirmed yet, but I wonder, will this 7.0 or maybe subsequent updates result in less plugins, which could then obviously result in less potential issues?
It should, maybe not at the moment. So we find like a lot of sites, currently, like people will be familiar with the likes of Divi or Elementor, that because for most people without a developer background, when you try to edit a site, it's quite difficult, or you don't know what you're doing. We or most agencies will install something like Elementor on it. So there is like a drag and drop builder that is added on top of WordPress. So it is a plugin on top of it. So again, like that's adding to your list of whatever other plugins you have. Less plugins on a site is always the better. They are good and efficient for doing things and keeping costs down. But again, there is a rule of thumb. The general thing is that kind of less is more with plugins. So if they do continue and like do a full transition into a block-based builder, that would remove the need for the likes of Divi or Elementor or any of those kind of what you call like WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, drag and drop builders. So again, that kind of like knocks out a plugin. Plugins again can kind of lead to sometimes like a house of cards, like a Jenga tower, that you're kind of stacking. You'll see a site with 40 plugins, and something goes wrong with one, and it just has a knock-on effect that breaks everything. So again, the less you can kind of have on a website, the better. And especially with the likes of those drag and drop builders, because they do go across the entire site, and they do like a lot of the visual things, like text boxes or video boxes. If something goes wrong with one of them, you'll see it straight away that something on the site is broken. Whereas, there might be other plugins that do something in the background that could be broken. You're not going to see it, but your customers or clients will pretty quickly see if the visual builder is broken, because the page is going to be upside down and just kind of not usable.
We have seen it. Absolutely. Well, I guess it's such early days. I mean, at the point of recording, the 7.0 was launched 6 days ago. So it'll be really interesting to see any kind of subsequent updates and also get feedback from businesses in terms of what the improvements are. Like, are they as good as WordPress is maybe saying they are? So definitely watch this space, guys, and hopefully we'll be back soon with more updates. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And thank you to Jack and Warwick. We'll see you next time on the ProfileTree podcast.